Hello everyone and welcome to my thoughts on Paladins' upcoming Street Style World Tour patch. This patch features a ton of talent reworks and lots of interesting balance. Before we get started, I wanted to quickly plug my new channel, YellowNinja. All my non-Paladins / Sims content is moving there, so if you enjoy that stuff, please check it out. Okay, let's start with the new event pass, Street Style 2. Skins for Ceres and Tyra. You can't see it, but I just rolled my eyes. Don't get me wrong, the skins look great, but these two champions have more than enough skins. I can think of a whole list of champions more deserving of skins with this theme. Next are notes regarding game modes. The arcade is here to stay. This queue will feature game modes that are not Siege. So in here you get a mix of Onslaught, TDM, King of the Hill, Payload, and Survival. The comments state that this allows Paladins to have all its core modes active at once. I think that's awesome. My only nitpick is because of this you can't select just TDM for example. You have to roll a chance for it. This in turn makes the arcade more akin to an Overwatch queue for quick play, where you're not sure as to what game mode you'll be playing. Unfortunately, this is a symptom of our low player base and funds. I do think it beats the alternative of having certain modes gone for a whole patch cycle. Next up are some console-specific changes. Legacy VGS is back for our controller friends. Can I get some woo-hoos for that? Also, aim assist is finally being addressed, with many characters having their magnetism brought down. There's also going to be an option to turn off aim assist completely. I know aim assist has been a hot topic for the console community, so I'm happy that you guys are finally getting it addressed. Next, and always my favorite section to discuss, is balance. We are in for a treat this patch, as the overall theme is reworking boring and useless talents, as well as a ton of quality of life updates. I do want to preface that I missed my chance to play on the PTS, as I was out celebrating my grandma's 90th birthday. So, my comments here are speculative. Let's kick this off with Azan. Base HP is going up from 4,250 to 4,500. This is accompanied by a 1-second reduction to all of his cooldowns. Unfortunately, we start off with some questionable changes. The devs state that Azan is receiving these buffs due to him underperforming. Maybe I'm out of the loop, but I feel that Azan is still a great tank. I enjoy playing Azan, so selfishly I like these buffs, but objectively, I don't really think he needed base kit buffs. Keep in mind that any change Azan gets to his HP is bolstered due to his passive DR. Additionally, his cooldown buffs, while helpful in base kit, also indirectly buff his tempering talent. Betty La Bomba is up next with a buff to Gotta Bounce. The talent will no longer reduce your movement speed by 15%. Gotta Bounce with the right build is some of the most fun you could have in Paladins in my opinion. So I am happy to see it buffed. But I also question why Betty's best talent is being buffed to begin with, especially since her other two talents are so lacking. Unfortunately for all the talent reworks this patch, Controlled Fury and Fiery Disposition go untouched. Next up is Bomb King with a long overdue change. Poppy Bomb is now considered a movement skill and as such will be disabled by cripples. About time. Our next talent rework is for Caspians everywhere at once. The old talent set Deadly Momentum's cooldown to 5 seconds, but that couldn't be modified by any other means. Additionally, you gained 1 stack of Sharp and Piercing Momentum upon hitting enemies with Dash. The new talent sets the cooldown of Deadly Momentum to 8 seconds, and it can now be lowered further with Chronos. Additionally, Caspian gains a third charge of the skill, and hitting an enemy with the dash portion of it heals you for 200. I really like the direction of the new Everywhere at Once. 3 charges of the skill with the shorter cooldown will make the talent true to its name. I also really appreciate the self-healing this talent provides. A lack of sustain is one of Caspian's most jarring weaknesses. While the 200 heal is small, it should help him somewhat in duels. I'm looking forward to playing with this. Next is Cassie, who after 2 patches is losing the poison damage on Blast Shot. Why it was even added in the first place is beyond me. Up next we got Corvus, who's getting a long requested buff to his ultimate. On top of affecting enemies, the ult will now affect teammates, healing them for 15% of their health on the initial cast, and then 12.5% of their health every second. Finally, the ult will move out of garbage tier status. For the average 2200 HP champion, this will heal for 275 health a second. Which, all things considered, the heals per second is a bit low, but keep in mind this is on top of Corvus' normal healing and the ult's original effects of damaging and slowing enemies. Very happy with this change. Up next, we got buffs for Grover. Blossom's passive heals are being upped from 70 to 80 per second, while the active heal is going up from 500 to 600. This on top of the Whirlwind ultimate, now providing 25% movement speed to allies for 4 seconds. Very nice base kit buffs. Grover's healing has been feeling quite subpar since his recent nerfs. Blossom's healing has been at 80 for so long now that I question why they even lowered it. The new utility to Whirlwind will aid the ultimate's power in the late game when Cauterize neuters the healing. That's not it for Grover. Our next talent rework is going to him. Rampant Blooming is being replaced. The old talent would heal yourself and allies after you use Vine. The new talent, Wisps of Sylvanas, grants a 15% movement speed bonus to those in Blossom's range. I'm interested to see how this talent will play. While the speed boost is pretty low, it is constantly active so long as Grover survives. Grover tends to fall into the trend of hosting only one usable talent, so I wonder if players will default to this for the free Nimble 2. Up next is Kasumi with more quality of life buffs. Her base move speed has been upped from 355 to 370, which, if my math is correct, should be a 5% move speed buff. Keep in mind that any move speed buffs via talents and cards scale off this newer higher value, which is great all around. The Spirit Traps now have less reveal range and deal 100 more damage. 200 damage is still very low, but anything Kasumi can get, she has to take. Last for Kasumi is a buff to the Savage Tear. The damage scaling per curse stack is going up from 20% to 30%. At max stacks, the ability will deal 750 damage, up from 600, returning some of its prior power as a finisher move. I quite like this change. Since losing its damage and disarm, the skill has felt pretty lackluster outside of applying a burst of curse stacks in a 1v1. While all these changes are nice, I don't think Kasumi will lose her status as the worst flanker in the game. Body and Soul is once again untouched. Until the Balance team decides to alter that skill, Kasumi will still struggle as a flanker. Kinessa is up next with a talent rework, but first, a small buff for the sniper rifle. The time to charge a shot has been lowered from 1.2 to 1.1 seconds. A happy in-between from a recent rebalancing and her original charge time. Okay, talent. Octopressor is getting the boot. Praise Genos, as it was just so annoying with all that visual noise. The new talent is Crystalline Battery. Oppressor Mines now target you to supercharge, healing for 125 health a second, and doubling your jump height. Carbine Rifle's damage is upped by 15% while supercharged. I really like the idea of this new talent. You sacrifice arguably the lamest part of your kit to empower yourself. In theory, this talent should allow Kinessa to play better as a mid-ranger. Very much looking forward to this. Next up is Koga. Adrenaline Junkie is going to the base kit. Well, a weaker version of it. Now, for every 100 damage Koga deals with SMGs, he will regenerate 1 stamina. This is accompanied by a nerf to the base regenerative stamina, going from 9 a second to 6 a second. When compared to the old Adrenaline Junkie talent, Koga will be getting his abilities back slower, but outside of the talent, this is a net buff. While strong, I do think this is a good change. Like mentioned in my other videos, if a talent or loadout card is mandatory for a champion to be playable, then I think adding it to the base kit is a good idea. That's not it for Koga. We also have a nerf to the Hellkite Claws. Each subsequent pierce with the claws will deal 30% less damage, so reverse Scorch. Fair change all things considered. The fact that Koga gets to keep his piercing damage should not go unnoticed. The time needed to enter and exit Dragon Stance has been reduced by about 50%, which makes the ability quick and snappy, a necessity for any stance swapping champion. Since Adrenaline Junkie is in the base kit, Koga has a new talent taking its place, Bullet Time. now increases Koga's fire rate and movement speed by 20% for 2 seconds after using Shadow Step. This is the first talent change that I'm not too fond of. Koga's SMGs can already feel overwhelming on the receiving end. Having them fire faster, even if for only 2 seconds, will bolster that frustration. Last up for Koga is a card rework to Swift Hands. The old card reduced the cast time on swapping stances. The new card grants you 3% scaling movement speed, while in Dragon Stance. Could be a fun card to combo with an agility build. Another big set of changes is for Lilith. First up, blood health is going up from 2,500 to 2,600. Her total base HP will be 3,100, up from 3,000. More blood HP is always appreciated on Lilith due to it being crucial for her ability usage. Speaking of abilities, Swarm's duration is being upped by 0.25 seconds. Its blood cost is being lowered on all stages as well. Previously starting at 350 HP and capping at 650, the new cost will start at 325 and cap at 600. This comboed with the blood cost on Deathwings going down from 280 to 250 will make it easier for Lilith to maintain her blood health and maintain ability usage. That's not it for Lilith. We got 2 talent changes here for her. First is buffs for Maelstrom of Carnage. The reduction in blood cost is going from 25 to 40%, and the bonus swarm range is going from 30 to 40%. I feel that this talent has been the resonance cult of the Lilith players. Personally, I didn't think the trade-off of losing swarms at range was worth it. Now with a minimal 360 blood cost at full charge, I could see this talent becoming an option for swarm-based Liliths. Last for Lilith is another rework to Curse the Cord. The old talent reduced the blood cost on your abilities, but upped their cooldown by 1 second. The new talent does the following. Blood-hexed allies ignore up to 10% damage reduction on enemies. You also heal an extra 250 blood health when a marked ally earns an limb. This talent, I'm a little wary of. I feel that ignoring damage reduction is a very slippery slope to be playing with. While annoying to face teams that never die, it's also annoying to get blown up before you can even react. I do feel that DR is necessary to rein in a lot of our low time to kill champions. Needless to say, I think the talent will see use in more coordinated play, as I don't see it reaching its full potential with randoms. Arguably next patch, Lilith will have 3 viable talents. Crazy to look back at how much she has changed since release. Next is a buff to Maeve's Street Justice. The talent will now grant you a 20% bonus to your ult generation. I still think the talent isn't worth picking, especially when compared to the recently rebuffed Cat Burglar. I think they should go back to the drawing board on this one. Maldamba's cooldown refund with Missing Mending Spirits is going from 1.75 seconds to 1.25 seconds. Fair change since its cooldown buff. Nyx is getting a rework to the poison on Royal Presence. The damage is being upped from 0.175% of the target's max health per tick to 0.2%. But the poison damage no longer lingers upon leaving the range. This is a pretty massive nerf for Nyx. It's a very small damage buff, going from about 1.2% of the target's max health per second to 1.4%. I don't think a very teensy damage buff is worth losing out on so much overall damage. I think lowering the dot's lingering effect from 5 seconds to maybe 3 would feel more fair. Up next we have the winner of the patch in my eyes, and that's homegirl Octavia. The unscoped fire from the marksman rifle is a tad more accurate, but its fire rate has been reduced from once every 0.15 seconds to once every 0.2 seconds. This is what has been listed in the stats since release, but apparently it was wrong. The recoil and screen shake on the marksman rifle has been reduced from 3.5 to 1, which equates to a roughly 70% reduction. Very excited for this one. I hate weapons that fight you as the player. This change should reduce a lot of frustration when playing Octavia. Onto abilities. Hell or High Water is going to the base kit. Now when landing with Commanding Leap, you create a rally point, providing 250 healing up front, and then 166 per second for 1.5 seconds. A nice little self-sustain buff for Octavia, and a little nudge up for her team. Distortion Field's cooldown is being lowered from 18 to 16 seconds, and it now has new air-based effects. Allies now gain 300% jump height while in the dome, while enemies have their airspeed reduced by 15%. I really like these changes. They're very creative and stay true to the ability's name. At least now, you aren't solely relying on this ability for a buggy cloak. I cannot wait to try out some coordinated strats surrounding the new dome. Overall, I really like these base kit changes to Octavia. They cement her status as a jack of all trades. In theory, good Octavia players should now have an answer for anything coming their way. I picture her being a top tier damage dealer in the near future. That's not it for Octavia though. Let's talk cards. The first is a rework to clean shots. The old card decreased your recoil while hovering. The new card, Got Your 6, increases the duration of the rally point from commanding leap by 0.25 seconds scaling. Not too sure if this card is worth running though. The lingering heal over time is pretty low, and the scaling on this card is also low in my opinion. Another card rework, this time for priority requisition. The old card reduced the cooldown of Distortion Field. This new card grants you and allies 4% scaling, crowd control reduction while in the field. Another option to further the utility Octavia provides. Okay, last up for Octavia is the talent replacing Hell or High Water, Paratrooper. This talent allows Octavia to hover for 4 seconds, gain 50% air control and increase her weapon damage by 10% while in commanding leap. Finally, we have something to capitalize on the hover portion of Octavia's kit. I feel like it's been a long forgotten aspect of this champion. A 10% damage boost will put Octavia closer to where she was on release, but that is tied towards hovering in the air. Once again, I am super duper excited to play Octavia next patch. Up next we got Ruckus. A portion of aerial assault is going to the base kit. Advance can now be fired while stationary to jet yourself upward. A very nice quality of life buff. Many high-level Ruckus players default to aerial assault solely for this buff. I'm interested to see if that changes now that it's in base kit. To accompany this, Ruckus is seeing a nerf to the Flux Generator talent. The bonus shielding is going from 1500 to 1000. Fair change in my eyes. Since the talent got CC immunity added to it, that's been its main strength. Up next is Ceres with a buff to Forsake. The cooldown of Restore Soul with the talent is going from 3 to 2.5 seconds. Now with Chronos 3, that cooldown goes to 1.75 seconds, which is just a quarter of a second higher than the base Restore Soul. Despite the community's criticisms of the talent, I still think it has potential, so I'm interested to see if this aids much in its power level. Up next is Strix. First, with my least favorite change this patch. Talon Rifle now ignores 10% of the target's damage resistance when fired from stealth. Why though? Talon Rifle hosts the highest base amount of damage in the game at 1,200. 1,800 with a headshot. If there's any champion that you're going to want DR against, it's Strix. And I know, there's a caveat that you have to fire from stealth, which makes this stat all that much worse, because usually you have the element of surprise when that's active. With this change, Strix can essentially ignore up to Haven 2, meaning you need a tier 3 item just to put a dent in his damage. Maybe it's because of my Strix PTSD, but I really hate this change. The Roost card is getting buffed. This card boosts the charge rate of stealth after hitting a sniper shot. The scaling is going from 10% to 30% a level. Annoying because I hate the champ, but I do think it's fair given the card's short uptime unless you're consistent. Last for Strix, a buff to Crack Shot. The downside of a slower firing pistol is no more. I actually like that talent, so I'm happy to see that stat go, as it was quite odd. Up next is 7. Tweaks to burst mode. I can't even bother, I've lost track as to how often I've seen the same thing time and time again in the patch notes. Grappling Hook's range is going down from 140 units to 110 units. Its cooldown is going from 14 to 12 seconds, and its pull strength is being increased. Overall with this change, 7 will be more mobile. This accompanied by a buff to the Explosive Dodge, with the ability now granting 7 0.25 seconds of damage immunity upon activation. This change has been one of hot topic. I know 7 can be super duper frustrating to face when played well, but I don't think this change is outrageous. Oftentimes, if a 7 player makes a positioning mistake, they just blow up. Having a small option to negate damage should, in theory, boost his survivability. In practice, we gotta see. I feel this change could either border on being useless to super duper annoying when in the right hands. Next, a card rework to Terror. The old card boosted the pull strength of Grapple. The new card grants you a 50 HP scaling shield for 4 seconds when using Hook, with an internal cooldown of 5 seconds. A nice option to help bolster 7's survivability. Normally, I'm against internal timers, but here, I think it's fair. Last up, 7 is getting a talent rework. Well, re-addition. Overcharged is gone. This is the talent that allowed 7 to pull in non-frontline enemies. The new talent is Execute Article 7, which is the return of the Face Laser. After 0.8 seconds of locking on, it deals 1000 damage and a new 20-unit AoE. Afterwards, anyone hit is executed if they are below 25% HP. Unpopular opinion, I did not like the old Overcharged. I thought the targeting on the beam was very janky, and it was 7's worst talent at the time. This new Execute Article 7 is that talent, with some nice additional buffs. A 20-unit radius is the same as an Amani Pyromania Fireball, so it's a fairly generous AoE, and the Execute finally gives this talent some kick. Maybe a little too much though. I saw a Reddit clip of a 7 hitting 2 auto-fire shots, popping ult, and then executing the target immediately. That seems kinda crazy. While I know many are happy to see the Face Laser return, I am a bit saddened that 7's pull mechanic is gone completely now. Up next is Talus with a slightly less accurate weapon. I imagine he'll still be annoying to face. Up next is Vatu. Kunai damage is being reverted to what it was a patch ago. But you can now animation cancel his reload after 0.6 seconds. Very nice, like that. And Dash is losing its DR completely. I know a lot of people wanted that. I imagine Vatu will still remain as a top tier pick, even with these changes. His mobility is just so good. But wait, it's not a Vatu section in the patch notes without his one and only talent, Enveloping Shadows. The cooldown reduction is going from 10% for just hitting one kunai, to 3% for each kunai hit. If you hit all 3, that'll be a 9% reduction. This is on top of the removal of the talent's internal cooldown. Okay, Enveloping Shadows is in a better risk-reward spot. Now can we look at Vatu's other 2 talents? Seriously? I'm gonna keep mentioning this every time he's brought up. His other 2 talents have not been touched since launch. It's sad that they were ignored once again in a patch focusing on talent reworks. Next up is Victor with pretty big buffs to burst mode. The talent's hipfire recoil has been reduced by about 30%, and the accuracy loss on hipfire has been brought down by 85%. Overall, the gun with the talent should be feeling a lot more accurate next patch. Up next is Vivian with a quality of life buff to the LMG. The camera shake when using precision sights is gone. Like I said earlier, I hate it in video games where weapons fight the player themselves. Nice change here. Last for big changes is Vora. Relentless Presence is going to the base kit, so Tendril will now have 2 charges with a 12-second cooldown. While I have argued the fact that Vora had to pick a talent to get 2 vines while 7 doesn't, I do feel that the eventual cooldown of 10 seconds was fair for a single charge ability. Still, this change will make Vora a lot more mobile at base, which frees up her talent options on open maps. Speaking of talents, Vora has 2 talent reworks. The talent replacing Relentless Presence is Parasitic Pull. Tendril can now target allies. Hitting allies with Tendril provides them your Tendril card effects, and hitting enemies deals 225 damage over 1.25 seconds. Smoke and Dagger Vora. Okay, wasn't expecting that. There's no healing with this talent, so what card benefits can we expect? We have a cooldown card, so that can't be applied, which leaves shield and DR cards. Both could have applications. What interests me is Elegant Parring. This card reduces the cooldown of Dark Siphon and Obliteration when using Vine. If you could reduce 2 of your allies' abilities with the use of yours, that could open up some very unique play scenarios. If it's just the DR and shield card, well, then I don't see this talent getting much play. You have to sacrifice your move skill for minimal effects. The extra damage on enemies is not noteworthy at all here. Vora's second new talent replaces Deafening Silence. The old talent would silence enemies for 2.5 seconds after hitting Obliteration. The new talent is Eclipsed Affection. which reduces Obliteration's cooldown by 2 seconds at base, and then by 50% after earning an limb. If used at max darkness stacks, the ability will deal an extra 100 damage, meaning 1000 damage total. This is the Rogue's Gambit for Vora. I will probably end up defaulting to this talent, as I think Obliteration is Vora's best ability, and being able to use it more often is a plus. I am a bit saddened by the loss of Deafening Silence though. I thought it was a sleeper pick. Last up is Willow with nerfs. Her passive is now officially named Pixie Dust. Biggest nerf in this patch. Now, after 4 seconds of use, Willow will fall faster. Fair change. Also, Blast Flower's max stacks are going from 4 to 3. Sucks that her only usable talent is getting the nerf hammer. Willow, in my opinion, suffers from the Vatu problem, where only one talent is viable, and as such, receives all the spotlight and balance updates. One last bit of news before we wrap up, and I know this isn't entirely related to Paladins, but Realm Royale is shutting down in February. I mean, we all saw it coming, but it's still very sad to see. That's going to be my thoughts on Paladins' upcoming Street Style World Tour patch. Overall, I am very excited to be playing. What are your thoughts on the upcoming patch? Let me know down below. Don't forget to clap that like button and laser down that sub button. Snatching the bell is also a great way to stay in the loop, and as always, I'm YellowNinja, and peace.